right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to KidLit Meet and Greet by Lori Keating and April Berry. I'm April, and today I'm here talking with Elizabeth James, author of Pippa Potter. Pippa Speaks Up. Pippa Potter is the president's daughter, and it's a new book series coming out. The debut book just came out, and I'm super excited to talk to Elizabeth about all things Pippa Potter and about all things Elizabeth. So without
Yeah.
further ado, this is Elizabeth James. Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I am a children's author, and I've had the honor of getting to work with you, and you helped me bring Pippa into the world. You helped critique it. So it's been very fun. And so I've put this book out, and it's the first in the chapter book series, Pippa Potter, President's Daughter, which is set in the White House, but then also weaves in a lot of mental health information for kids that I think like it's very powerful and empowering for them to know. So this book focuses on anxiety, and then the future books will focus on different things. So the one that I'm working on right now is going to deal with anger. So I'm really excited about that because I think that's something we don't necessarily empower kids to deal with in the most healthy ways. So that's kind of what I'm working on. I also do picture books, and maybe someday in the future I'll tinker with middle grade, but we'll see. I like to spice things up.
I like that. I also love that Pippa Potter deals a lot with anxiety. I think it's going to be such a helpful tool for kids. My daughter enjoyed the story too, a lot.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
she really enjoyed learning about life inside the White House. She's like, Mom, did you know they have a bowling alley? And I'm like, well,
Hmm.
I did know, but that's cool that now you know too.
Right. Well, I when I started writing it, my daughter is 10 and she has dyslexia, so she's a very reluctant reader. So like to read some of the first drafts, like I'd have to like pay her. Like I'd be like, I'll take you to Starbucks, or stuff like that. And when I gave her one of the first drafts, like she was reading about the White House and I had put in something like about because I had watched a documentary. Michelle Obama had her documentary on Netflix, and she was talking about how she wouldn't let the maids clean her daughter's rooms. And I was like, oh, interesting. So like I wove that, and then my daughter was like, they would clean their rooms. And I was like, okay, I think this is where you get the like hook that like whether kids struggle with anxiety or not, like that those little interesting things where you're like it's almost like a fantasy world. It's not fantasy, but just kind of being taken to this other world that you didn't even know exists, but actually, really does. So then by the end, she was asking me to write faster because she did actually want to finish reading the
Oh,
book.
how sweet. I
Yes.
had a son when he was younger. He would do anything for a quarter. So he would have read your book for a quarter.
That's a good price.
I know, right? I wish it was
I'd
still
give him
that
a few
way.
extra quarters.
What made you start writing for children?
So I've always been a writer. I went to college. I was a magazine journalism writer and editor. So I did that. So I've always been a writer. And then over the years, like I've kind of just expanded what that looks like. Like I went into more marketing. I worked for a Christian book publisher. And so I wrote like press releases and worked on things like that. And then once I started having my own kids, I wanted to stay home. So I did more freelance. And then my daughter was in first grade at the time, and we started getting her therapy for some social anxiety. And as she was working through that, she was in there for about or two, taking therapy for maybe 1 or 2 years. At some point, I thought, like these tools that she's learning are so powerful. Like, I was very anxious growing up. And it took me until I was in my 20s to even realize this thing called anxiety existed and what I was experiencing was anxiety. Like I had no idea. And so I was just thinking, how powerful, I felt really blessed that we could give our daughter these tools now at like 7 years old to kind of deal with some of her feelings. But like, what about all the other kids, like who were just like me, who didn't know and, like my parents did the best they could and they didn't know what anxiety was either. So that was the initial prompt for me to switch gears just seeing what my daughter was experiencing and feeling like, like I think other kids deserve to learn these things as well. And then so that just kind of got me into the whole world of KidLit, and it's been a fun ride.
Very cool. You're so right that kids just don't know, and they don't know because their parents don't know. And
Yeah,
so it's great that you're getting these tools into this generation
yeah,
because it's going to carry down and trickle down to
yeah,
the next generation, the next,
yeah. Well, and I think like when you look at the statistics of anxiety in kids, it's it's like over almost 20%, I think. It's like a very high percent of kids that they believe struggle with anxiety, and most of them don't ever get treatment. So I do think it's something that's like pretty powerful and very rampant, today to address.
Yeah, I'd believe that.
Yeah.
Where do your ideas come from?
I think it's just kind of they pop in. When I first started doing Pippa, she was not Pippa. She was just an ordinary girl, like just like she was like my daughter, like it's kind of like my daughter and me, my personality, and my daughter's really athletic, which I'm not. So the first iteration was this mismatch of us, and she was just really ordinary. And I wrote it and I queried it, and I got like no interest at all. And I was like, okay. And this is when I was still learning. And I thought, oh, I need a hook. Like, I need something like that's gonna, when you do your pitch contest, like that hook that you're gonna put out there. And at some point, I must have thought of, oh, like there are all these my daughter was also at the time really into like Sophia the First, the princess.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what if that instead of being a princess, like what if she was like the president's daughter? So I got that idea at some point, wrote it down, put it in a folder, and like completely forgot about it for like over a year. And then I was like, you know what? I want to go back and like resurrect that story and rework it. And then I found I had this whole first, like a whole outline written already. And I was like, I don't know where this came from. I don't remember at the time. I must not have been, super like into it because I just let it sit for a year. And I have that with the story that got me my agent was it was one it popped in my brain when I was like putting my boys to sleep. I went to bed, brainstormed an outline, and then just let it sit, like kind of forgot about it for months. And then I was like, oh, and it was like almost, written. And so then I wrote it, and that was the one that she fell in love with. So I think some of those, like you may not, I don't always realize that they're like powerful stories or that they're how strong they are. Um, and I forget about them and then I re-find them again and oh, okay.
I like I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel a lot of the times with my stories that the ones I put in a drawer are not necessarily put in a drawer in my head. They're still
Yes.
rumbling in the background in my head, and I don't always know it. But then eventually, all of a sudden, it'll just come to me as like, oh, this is how to fix that plot hole. And I
Yes.
don't even realize I'd been thinking about it all this time. It kind of
Yes.
sounds like maybe you work in a similar way.
Yes. Yes.
Very
And
cool.
it's funny, I read a biography about L.M. Montgomery, who wrote Anne of Green Gables, and they talked about like how she would go to parties and she'd be in the midst of a party and she'd be like, oh, that's what I'll do. And they were saying like how weird it was, but like that was just like her brain was the same way, like
Hmm.
always tinkering with a plot,
Yeah,
even like in the midst of doing a million other things.
interesting. I never knew that about her.
Yeah,
See, look, great minds think alike.
I
You,
know,
me, Ella Montgomery.
right.
What is your favorite thing about being a writer?
I feel like it's something like second grade was when I got into writing. So I don't feel like it's ever anything I've ever like not like done, like it's been
Mhm.
my whole life. Like it wasn't until high school that I thought I could actually make a career out of it. So it's just something that I feel like is like second nature to me. I love playing with words. I think even in high school, I had a notebook that just had like the most interesting, my favorite words. I would just write down and try to use in stories I was writing. Um, so I think it's just always been second nature to me.
Mhm.
I don't know, I've never been able to not do it, I think.
Nice. What has been the most challenging for you, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
I think probably I mean, there are a lot of challenges, but one of the biggest ones I would say was trying to figure out the whole book idea at the beginning, trying to, and just figuring out all these rules that you're supposed to follow and how the publishing system works. There's a lot of, it's not necessarily like first nature, like there's a learning curve for sure. So I think learning that, and I think not taking criticism or rejection personally has been very huge, and for me, like as someone who's like struggled with anxiety, like my tendency would be like, okay, like that's too hard, so it's really challenged me to push back and push through and kind of not take some of those things as like the final answer, and to believe in myself, even when the circumstances, whether it's agents' responses or things like that, like that's not necessarily the last word, or that's not even
Yeah.
necessarily the truth, like they might say no, but that doesn't mean the story's bad. So I think it's challenged me in that way to kind of like a mindset shift,
Mhm.
which has been really good for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Pippa, but I know you also write picture books. Do you feel more drawn to one genre or the other, or a completely different genre between other than these?
I wouldn't necessarily, I think I almost feel like picture books can be harder
Mhm.
because every word has to be perfect. Whereas like in a chapter book, picture books are written for the parents mostly to read aloud. Chapter books have to be written for the kids. So the chapter books by nature have to be more simple, Um, so while the plot has to be more complex, the writing is more simple. So I almost feel like it can be easier, even though it's longer form, than the picture book where every word has to be perfect, every page. You have to you're limited by, your spreads, your page turns. So it feels more like a science. And even though they're shorter, they take more time. Um, but I also feel like there are just certain stories that I'm attracted to that like capture my interest. And it doesn't really matter, it could be any genre, but if it captures my interest, like those are the ones that I'm going to follow. So I kind of follow my muse wherever it takes me.
Got it. So wherever your inspiration is at the moment, that's what you're drawn to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like and I've heard like Kate DiCamillo talk about that. Like this is the story that wanted to be told,
Mhm.
and you only have so much say, and like you kind of have to listen to what the story is telling you.
Mhm.
And I felt that, for myself as well.
Yeah, I feel like Elizabeth Gilbert says something like that in her book,
Hmm.
Big Magic.
Okay, I can see that.
Um, what kind of atmosphere do you like to have when you're writing?
It has to be quiet. I
That
mean,
is the
like I know
best.
some people who can go to a coffee shop and I would get nothing done. I need absolute quiet. For sure. And when my boys were little, when they were still in preschool, my goal was to write 15 minutes a day. And at that point, like I could kind of tune out like I'd let them watch a show or something. I could tune out the TV, but I'm not sure I could do that today anymore. So I only write while they're at school.
What has been the most helpful to you in getting your story's submission ready?
Well, I definitely believe in the power of critique. I think what we do with midweek critique is huge, and I've benefited from that with my own stories. Getting other people's perspectives and their expertise to weigh in. But I also think there's like a flip of the coin with that, where kind of like I was saying earlier, you also have to learn to listen to yourself and like what do you feel the story is telling you? Because someone might recommend a change that might actually not be right, So I think it's like a dance between you have to know what the story needs, and other people can see that sometimes easier than you can, but also sometimes they could be wrong.
Right.
Um, so I think I heard a quote by one author, and he had said like sometimes if you change just 5%, or you make 5% of the changes that someone recommends, like that's going to be too much, depending on what they're saying and what the story needs. So I do think, yeah, it's just a balance between knowing how much critique to take and how much to trust your gut too.
Yeah. It is a learning curve and a struggle for sure.
Hmm.
Tell us, who is your agent? Because I know you just signed with one. And what do
Yes.
you enjoy about working with this new person?
So my agent is Terry Wolf with AKA Literary. And so what I really appreciate is I sent her one of my picture. She wanted laugh out loud funny picture book manuscripts. And so I sent her one that, I thought was funny, and she said she loved it. And so she does like little picture book readings with, like, she has this like team of, I don't know if it's 10 or 20 people, professionals, or different walks of life, like teachers, kids, parents, and she will bring manuscripts to them to get their feedback and read. So she before, we even signed, she took it to them to kind of like basically get like a first run. Um, and I just appreciated, like, she has such expertise and like all these connections. When I was talking to her one time, she was throwing around this editor's name and this, and here's what so I just really appreciate the connections that she has and the knowledge of the industry. And so I'm really excited to get that level of expertise. Like, I think like she really believes in this story. And so it's like for me, it's like I think it's a good story, but I feel like she has the expertise to actually know that.
Yeah. And that focus group approach, how cool is that? I
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that.
right. Well, and then like to me to feel like that's like kind of scary, but it's like to feel like you pass that test, it's like, okay, like now I feel like it's not just that I think it's a good story. So that's been really validating as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
What is your dream as a writer?
I mean, I kind of feel like I'm like living the dream, or like I feel like where I am now is more of a is the dream. Like I wanted to write a book and get it published and get an agent, and I've now done both of those things. So I'm kind of just excited to see where it leads, and to keep stretching myself. And so I don't know. I mean, I kind of am now just like I feel like I'm like along for the ride. Like, let's see where we go with this thing.
Nice. Just living the dream for a while. I like it.
Yeah, I mean,
Enjoying
I
the
would like to
journey.
see my books in libraries, and well, I mean, Pippa has made it into some libraries. But just to keep publishing, maybe that would be my dream, is just to keep doing what I'm already doing.
Mhm. Nice. What projects are you most excited about right now?
So I'm working on Pippa #2. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of summer. Because I would love to be able to release it before the election. That was kind of the
Oh,
impetus
smart.
for, yeah, that was kind of the impetus to put it out in January and kind of go to self-publish it myself, because I realized, I had a couple agents who requested fulls, but I realized like by the time I would even ever hear back from them, it wouldn't be until this spring. And then if I wanted to self-publish it, it'd probably be too late. So I thought, I would love to just get this out there and have it ready for the election, and so I think I would like to have the second book out there and see how that does. And,
Mhm.
um,
Also, how helpful to have a book about dealing with anger right before the election, too.
well, that's true. Yes. Maybe we need to write one for adults too.
Yes, I'm on board with this.
Yeah.
Everything I need to know about life, I learned from Pippa Potter.
Yeah. I think that's true for a lot of grown-ups. We all need the books.
It's true. So, a couple fun questions for you.
Yep.
What is something that you can't live without and why?
What is something that I can't? I have twin boys who are 7, and they will always do the like, would you rather do this or this? And one day they asked me, Mom, would you rather have a smartphone or your computer, your laptop? And I was
Ooh,
like, well, I
tough
mean, I would
question.
yeah, like I was like, I would prefer my laptop, but like I need my phone for the like maps. Like I could not get around. So I think probably one thing I could not live without is like my like Google Maps, like driving GPS stuff. because I have a terrible sense of direction, and rely very heavily on my phone to get me almost anywhere. I mean, not like the places I go routinely, but like friends' houses that don't live in our neighborhood and
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I use mine a lot too.
Yeah.
If you could be any animal, what would you choose and why?
Since I was a little kid, I was really into manatees. So growing
Oh,
up, like that was like my answer. So I would stick with that. I just kind of always thought they were like, I could think I can kind of relate. They're kind of shy and gentle and I mean, we did go one time on a vacation and it was not like a pleasant experience. Like it was like really buggy water and
oh,
like
right.
it was kind of miserable. But I think they're like pretty cool like creatures and they need some protection. Um and sometimes I feel like, as someone like with anxiety, like I kind of feel like, you know, in need of like a safe, always looking for like safety in the world. So that's what I think.
Nice. I like it.
Thanks.
I like that as metaphor a lot for you. Very cool. I'm getting ideas in my head. I'm
Ooh,
going to
take them
send them
and
to you.
run.
You can write a picture book on it.
Oh, there we go. Co-write.
Tell us where we can find you online and on social media, Elizabeth.
So I've got my website, which is elizabethjameswrites.com. And then all my social media is pretty much the same. Instagram and Facebook is Elizabeth James Writes. And then Twitter does not allow you as long of a username. So
Okay.
it's Eliz James Writes. ELIZJAMES Writes.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me, and
Yeah.
letting me to get to know you a little better and all the viewers as well.
Hmm.
Is there anything else that you would like to share before we sign off?
The only other thing is if anybody wants to read, I have the first chapter of Pippa Potter, President's Daughter, available. If you go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, you can get a link to download the whole first chapter. And the download actually also like includes some of the illustrations. So like you can see like there's her family, which I also illustrated those myself. So that was a fun challenge. I'm trying to see. And there's some of the other people. So if anybody's interested in learning more, they can do that. And I would love for them to check her out and get to know Pippa as well.
Yeah, and we're going to put up a few of your illustrations at the very end of this video too, so people can enjoy them there.
Awesome.
I'll have to
Thank you.
get the link from you
Okay.
at a newsletter sign up. We'll make sure to include that in the notes.
Okay.
All
Awesome.
right. Well, thanks again for meeting with us. And
Oh,
thank you for watching along, viewers. And don't miss next week for yet another video.
thank you for having me.
Thank you.